condemnation from the Middle East, from the West, the UK, the United States. We've seen it everywhere. Those vehicles couldn't be marked more clearly. We're looking at them in this video. Those were aid workers. You have other aid organizations now pausing their efforts, saying, we don't know that it's safe for our aid workers to go into Gaza, given what happened with World Central Kitchen. So what is the spot now that President Biden has been in for a long time, but that was made much worse by what happened? We can talk about domestic politics. We saw a little bit in some of those primaries last night. But on the international stage, what is the spot he's in right now?
Yeah, to your point, those vehicles couldn't have been better marked. In fact, it looks like from the footage of the destroyed van, one of the missiles went right through the logo of the World Central Kitchen, right there, right through the logo, and just killed everyone inside. And it should be noted, to Richard's point earlier, this mistake hit comes a day after the precision strike that killed the Iranian general in Syria. It's hard to reconcile those two things. Yes, there's real political pressure. We'll get into it a little later. But there was, again, a substantial uncommitted vote last night in Wisconsin. That's a protest vote about Gaza. Yeah, it's the primaries. So there's a belief that a lot of those voters will eventually come home to President Biden. They're not all going to. There's some real anger there, and that's not going to dissipate. And now, at least, we have a moment where the president, and this has been bubbling up from behind the scenes for a while. President Biden, frankly, is furious at Prime Minister Netanyahu. But yet, still, his administration has not conditioned weapons sales, conditioned aid. They haven't done it yet. Now, maybe this is the moment that comes. This also happens just, we think, a week or two, perhaps, before this Rafah offensive, which really could be a flashpoint.
Okay, I'm so sick of hearing how upset President Biden is. The buck stops with him. If he wants to stop arms sales, if he wants to stop the bombs that are indiscriminately killing civilians, he can. He has the power. We don't need him going and his aides going to reporters and talking all background about how upset they are. What happened yesterday is still going to happen. At Mika's conference, the head of the Palestinian Red Crescent spoke, and she was incredibly moving. This was in Abu Dhabi. And she spoke about the difficulty of aid getting in the country, period, from the north or south. And she described a process that was kind of like the TSA changing the rules every single day, going through airport security. Until those checkpoints are working and aid is going through, we don't need to be giving any more arms sale or money. It needs to stop. It needs to be conditional. It's ridiculous that it's going on unchecked and unfettered, and we're sitting around and talking how upset we are while we hemorrhage billions of dollars.
It's the worst of all worlds right now for the president. The criticism looks increasingly empty. It's 6 months. We're reaching the 6-month milestone of this war. That's one fact to begin with. And two things have happened in the last few days. One is these attacks are continuing, and yet so are U.S. arms transfers to Israel without conditions. They've been going on for 6 months. Why does Israel need 2,000-pound bombs to be used in high-density populated areas? Then, 10 days ago, what does Israel do? It expropriates 2,000 acres of land in the West Bank for settlement construction. Where is the White House reaction to that? That is how you undo even the possibility, Joe was talking about it, of one day getting to a two-state solution. If you're going to have a Palestinian state, the last I checked, states are built on territory. If the territory isn't there to build it on, you can talk about two states till the cows come home. You don't have it. Where's the administration reaction to that? So at some point, the words become empty, and the Biden administration is very close to having reached a point where their criticism of Israel is too much for the same people who criticize Chuck Schumer, but it's not nearly enough to affect the course of what is going on. That is the worst of all possible worlds.
It looks weak and impotent. You were in the HW administration at the State Department.
At the White House.
At the White House. What would James Baker have done? And seriously, that's what we should be asking ourselves, because that was a moment when we were a diplomatic superpower.
So we confronted Israel. If you remember at the time, Israel was subsidizing people leaving the Soviet Union, and they're going into the occupied territories. We basically said to Israel, we'll help these people to get out of the Soviet Union, but we're not going to subsidize their going into the West Bank. That forecloses options down the road. We understand you may not have a Palestinian partner today, but we want to preserve the option for the day when we might be. And the administration basically said to the Israelis, you have a choice. They made their choices at economic consequences. This administration has got to have some teeth in it.
So, Richard, let me put it bluntly to you. Does Benjamin Netanyahu give a damn that Joe Biden is upset, frustrated, and outraged by what he's seeing? And if not, what would make him give a damn?
No, he doesn't. And indeed, increasingly, he's trying to position himself as someone in front of the Israeli body politic saying, you may not like me. You may think I made a mistake on October 7th, but I'm all that stands between you and American pressure. So he doesn't care. What would he care about? He would care about damaging the relationship with Israel's most important benefactor. And that would mean the United States, I'm sorry it's come to this, Willie, that we have to basically have some sanctioning of what Israel did. Not just the stuff in the UN, it's got to be conditioning arms deliveries, and it's got to be, I would think, some trade sanctions, for example, against goods coming out of West Bank settlements. Why should they be able to come here, for example, without certain economic tariffs or other economic penalties? We've got to basically, we can't have a policy based on persuading Israel. We have to increasingly have an independent policy that reflects our interests and values.